Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mike in Long Island, New York. I sent this once, but much like Fredo, I was passed over. But I know this is a good question, and since first sending, I've made my first purchase from Cornette's Collectibles, so I'm hoping this sways you into giving me a shot. Quick question.
So you're one of those assholes that sent me money when I asked you not to.
It says in parentheses, hardcover comic, so I believe he is. Yes.
Oh, God. Oh, no. Well, I did. I brought that on myself. I asked him to send me money for that.
Here's his question. What was the first finish you remember seeing where you thought it was too much and crossed that fine line between looking great but still being safe enough to pull off on a nightly basis? I remember watching Chris Candido pulling off a top rope powerbomb on a fairly regular basis in 1995 and 1996 that gave me pause. I guess some people could make the argument that even as far back as the Road Warriors using the Doomsday device was the first instance, but for as many times as they did it, there weren't a ton of injuries, excluding Henry Godwin, I guess. And that's the end of it's a weirdly put question, but I guess, when did you first start seeing finishers that you thought, wow, that's close to being really dangerous?
Well, goddamn Candido started doing that powerbomb in Smoky Mountain, him and Bobby Blaze. And when he first told me, I was like, what? Once again, him and Bobby, the idea was to put them with the junior heavyweight belt that we had at the time, to put them on the card to do the athletic match that other guys weren't doing, especially in the main event where it was more angle, grudge, etc. And they were young guys that could do a bunch of shit. And I was nervous about it and didn't necessarily like it, but I was all right if he's the only one that does it, and Bobby was the only one that was going to take it. It was helping them get over on the undercard. And they both did it well, and neither one got hurt. We never did it anymore. But I guess he did it a lot in ECW and etc. I don't know. I don't remember the first time, because you never, if you don't know that something is going to be significant at a later date, you don't necessarily, write it down. Like I never wrote down the day and time that I watched my first TV wrestling show. When the first time I ever saw wrestling on TV, I didn't immediately go write it down. Oh, this is the first time I've ever seen my future career. So the same thing is when it happens gradually, and especially in other places, because remember, for most of the 90s, I was either in Smoky Mountain, where we obviously weren't doing crazy bullshit like they were doing in ECW or the early independents. And then I was in the WWF, where they were doing crazy bullshit, but it wasn't stupid crazy bullshit, and it was with a budget and planned out and somewhat professionally pre-planned, sketched out. We ain't gonna fucking just try this shit on the fly and kill ourselves, except for Mick Foley every once in a while. But at some point during the 96 through 99 period that I was in the WWF, I saw guys starting to go too far, and then you'd see more of it on WCW. But then I went to OVW, where once again, nobody was going to be allowed to go too far. And we had a spectacular business for a number of years doing wrestling, but I would see, whenever I watched still the WWF tapes, or even the new modern independents, where it's like, what the fuck are you people doing? So I can't remember the first time, because it happened gradually, but it's been at least 20 years that guys started just openly doing stupid shit that they don't know how to do, or that they shouldn't be doing, even if they do. The guys at the high level that perform the tables, ladders, and chairs and all that stuff. Even then, Joey Matthews got his face caved in by one of those ladders and almost killed him, and other guys have been hurt. So it's been the last 20 years. A lot of guys grew up as we've talked about, fans of either Mick Foley taking bumps and didn't realize that there was a lot more to him, or just ECW in general, and they didn't get the fact that that was a fucking I'm sorry, but if everybody says they watch ECW these days and it doesn't hold up as well as Smoky Mountain does, or even Memphis of the 90s or wrestling of the 90s, because it was so pop culture fad oriented flavored. And so much of it was garbage wrestling to disguise. And Paul did a great job of it, but to disguise the fact that he couldn't afford the major league talent. So that's why he had the reputation for getting the most out of guys that he could get. And a lot of that was through the garbage wrestling matches, the hardcore shit. And, but then, those guys ended up, many of them either on pain pills or they're currently dead or in not good shape physically because they were allowed by the boss, which is the biggest issue I've always had with Paul's company, to do too fucking much. And over and over, repetitively.
I'll tell you what, let me jump in real quick, Jim, because this one question has turned into a completely different answer. So let me ask another question that came in, and then we'll get back to this. But this question came in via email from Jeff. I heard you rant about the GoFundMe for the Deathmatch Idiot. I completely agree. Do you think Paul Heyman deserves some blame for warping a generation of people into believing that hardcore death matches are actual wrestling?
Yes, because they, in the literal definition and application of the word, these goofballs were marks for ECW, but it's just like the goofball Vince Russo was a mark for wrestling angles and wrestling promos without understanding what all he remembered was Jimmy Snuka got hit with a coconut. He didn't remember the build up or the follow through or whatever. He just high spot mentally, image, angle, promo, high spot. That's what he thought wrestling was. These guys and those who have followed them didn't understand that it was a component of ECW, that they also had the Malenkos and the Guerreros. And they also had guys that could fucking work, actually. And they also had fucking personalities and booking that covered up for the lack of personalities in some cases. And all they saw was the fucking, barbed wire car crash shit. And because they were marks and they were one-dimensional, not multi-dimensional. And that appealed to them for some reason. Hey, let's mutilate myself and let me try to get people to watch me do it. And so, yes, he deserves quite a bit of the blame. And I wish I had the email in front of me because I was going to print it out and I lost it. But somebody emailed me why. I'm trying to remember the way it was phrased, but basically because I blistered the fluorescent light tubes and the fucking barbed wire and the broken glass and the panes of glass and all the stupid shit that they use in these matches. And he said, I've been watching wrestling and I've seen old tapes and they had tables and chairs in the ring and whatever back in the 70s. And yes, that's true. They did. And here is the difference. And here's something else that, once again, the young kids these days don't think about, have never been informed of or instructed or educated about, because they don't give a shit, because they just want silliness. You always used, and go back in anything that I've ever had anything to do with, in Ring of Honor, except if in some cases like the goddamn ladder match where I said, okay, the fans all want the ladder match, let them do whatever they want to do. But in OVW and Smoky Mountain Wrestling, et cetera, what should be used in a wrestling match as far as foreign objects and what shouldn't be? Well, let's start with what should be under the ring. This was part of the art of doing shit like this when you were trying to make people believe what they were seeing, is that you couldn't just pull out a fucking VW Beetle out from under the fucking ring and use it without people going, well, why the fuck is that there? Right? So now they pull all this shit out. Why the fuck is that there? What's under a ring? A toolbox. So you got hammers, you got screws, you got fucking wrenches. You got, whatever the fuck is in a toolbox. What's around ringside? Also, an announcer's table. One. Maybe you have another table under the ring in case that table gets broken, but one tops. When there's 5 tables under the ring or all these fucking sheets of wood, and they pull them out, it's just because, well, obviously that was put there for this fake fucking exhibition of wrestling to use. There were chairs that the announcer sat at his announce table. There's a ring bell. That's been used in the past. There's sometimes a hammer or an instrument that rings that fucking bell. What else would be under the ring? I'll tell you one of my favorites is I think the first time I saw it was Jackie Fargo doing a TV studio because there was one hanging on the wall, but I used it in Smoky Mountain. One time we had Ricky Morton in a Smoky Mountain street fight tied by his neck to the fucking ropes, and he was bleeding and he was hanging there and he was helpless, and the Heavenly Bodies were double teaming Robert Gibson. And the ring crew guy comes out with a knife and cuts Ricky down, and he drops. And then he gets up and he looks and he sees his partner who's in the ring, you know, being pummeled by these two guys. And I'm fucking keeping the referee away. And he goes under the ring and he comes out with a fire extinguisher. And I understand now some of them are poisonous. You can't do this. But back then, and he gets up on the apron where everybody can see him, and the heels look around, and he fucking shoots one of the heels in the face with a fire extinguisher from like 8 feet away. But it makes a big fucking pop from the people, a big fucking cloud. And he shoots the other heel. Oh my God, now the heel's blind and he can't see. And that's the way he starts the fucking comeback. Then he picks up a chair and goes from there, because that would be under the ring. There's no reason otherwise than we're setting up a phony stunt show for fluorescent light tubes to be under the ring, for rolls of barbed wire to be under the ring. They used to have barbed wire matches, but not where the guys would get rolled up in it, but where it would be surrounding the ring post, and part of the drama of the match was trying to force your opponent into the real barbed wire. But you didn't actually get rolled up in it, because that would be fucking stupid. And nobody broke panes of glass, because did I mention that's fucking stupid? You can cut an artery that way. It was about what was in your environment, in the atmosphere, naturally, that somebody could, on the spur of the moment, without pre-planning, see, grab a hold of, use in some kind of way, and make it a part of the match rather than just shit put out there for people to play around in a phony exhibition. And that's the difference. So what objects are okay? If it reasonably belongs under a wrestling ring or around a wrestling ring, then figure out creative ways to fucking use it. If it doesn't, don't. And I liked ladder matches when they invented them in Calgary, when Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon had one. Okay, you grab this ladder and you climb and get the belt. It's a updated fucking coal miner's glove match, which also, when done well by people who know what they're doing, are very fucking exciting. But now that they added tables, ladders, and chairs, why the fuck are the ladders and the tables and the chairs involved? Or a tables match where you have to put your opponent through a table to win. That's the stupidest fucking thing that I've ever heard of in my life. That's why I've never booked one. Because in what other athletic contest would you win a boxing match by knocking your fucking opponent through the goddamn ringside table? It's stupid, and it makes it contrived and showy. Take a bump through the fucking table in a regular match, but don't do it very often. Just like the fire extinguisher, you do once every couple of years. And on the big show, somebody goes through the fucking table. But don't just do multiples of it on every show, because then it becomes what it is now, goofy shit. Stupid human tricks that guys do to pop a crowd there, whatever their definition of a meager crowd is, and risk their necks, and people, by the next match, they've forgotten about it because they see it over and over. If you're just coming up with, why is there a cookie sheet under the ring? There could be a garbage can, but why is there a cookie sheet in a garbage can? Why would there be a road sign under a wrestling ring in an arena? Well, the answer is because it sounds good when you hit a guy with it, but it's stupid. You've killed the buzz. You've shit the bed. Already, when you bring out something like that, it's obvious. Then don't even get me started on the fucking thumbtacks. You couldn't even win a real fight with thumbtacks, but you really can fucking hurt yourself with thumbtacks. So that's the stupidest thing that's ever happened in wrestling. Because it was a goddamn fad that then a couple of guys that fucking people liked started doing, and now everybody does it. But it's fucking ignorant. And it makes wrestling look like the lowest of the low fucking... They don't even do the freak shows at State Fair anymore. I can't go and see the goddamn world's fattest man with tits as big as my Aunt Lola's head. And I can't go and see the fucking 5-legged fucking sheep or the cow with one eye or the bearded lady. But I can go to what's supposedly a professional wrestling fucking match, even in a major NBA style arena, and I can watch guys rolling around in fucking thumbtacks, which is stupid.
What do you think when you hear, and I'm sure you have because I have, people say that you can't say anything negative about the ECW kind of brawls because it came out of Memphis. It's all Memphis based. Memphis did it, so you can't really criticize anyone else for doing it.
Well, yes, you can, because Memphis didn't do it like that. It just, once again, did I mention the word marks? The guys in the business were the marks more than the fans. Once again, in Memphis, they had a barbed wire match where they wrapped barbed wire around the ring posts, and the drama of the match was trying to force your opponent into it, and they had a match in the middle of it. In ECW, they have a barbed wire match where the guys actively roll around and get rolled up in barbed wire for real and cut themselves up for real. In Memphis, they hit each other over the head with fucking gimmicks that were gimmicked. I'm not going to spoil all the secrets here, but if you've watched Ring of Honor or even a little MLW over the last few years, you've seen some gimmicked gimmicks, and you can't tell them from the real ones that people are bashing each other over the head with and getting fucking concussions because they're gimmicked. Because there's a little art to that. And Memphis never had just blatantly stupid matches, hardcore matches, where guys, instead of hitting each other with garbage cans and chairs or running each other into tables that happened to be there at ringside, built like they went to Home Depot and got a do-it-yourself kit, and they're in shop class at high school, built these structures to then cooperate in taking bumps through, fooling absolutely nobody in the audience that they're really fucking fighting with each other. It's just a stunt show. They didn't do any of that because I watched it every fucking night. That's because there are some people who are marks who only see one dimension of the thing and don't understand the depth of it or the presentation of it or the logic of it. Even though there were silly things done in Memphis wrestling, just like there were silly things done in a lot of territories in wrestling, if it was good, if it drew money, it was because it still made sense within the presentation. Nobody was winking at each other saying, we're really playing at being mad, but we're not. It wasn't phony and silly for the sake of being phony and silly. If something was silly, it was to make fun of the heel, who then came back and did something dastardly to get even. And then the babyface sold it like he's goddamn blown up with a hand grenade, and it was real. And then the babyface wants to get revenge, which is real. Even if that revenge is making a fucking buffoon out of the heel instead of hurting him physically. Because that, as the story was told so many times, hurts a man worse to be humiliated than it does to be punched in the face. So that way you could endlessly, especially in a weekly territory like Memphis or anywhere in the South, instead of bloodying and beating and fucking hurting your heel every week, it was more important sometimes that you embarrassed him and humiliated him. And that was the blow off. And you could get more mileage out of that because you weren't destroying a guy's body. There's layers and there's elements of this that they don't understand because all they did was grow up watching people hit each other over the head with shit on television. And then they were allowed to get in the business because now any fucking jackleg can get in the wrestling business. So they don't know these things. You ought to see some of the guys that have been around for a while. When we'll need something at a TV and I will give them my shopping list and tell them, bring us back to me and I'll fix you something. You ought to see them with their fucking mouths open like, we didn't know you could do that. What the fuck have you been doing? We just hit people with this shit. What the fuck?